little bit about you.
Well, about 25 years ago, I was asked by my professional body to look at how we made sense of what we were looking at, particularly in reading. I naturally wrote a report, and the report was the start of a long journey for myself, in which I've got involved with a tremendous amount of research and development, innovation. I've been in lots of awards, I think 6 books I've got, and essentially it's become a fascination for me, as well as something that I consider absolutely critical in not just autism, but quite a lot of other conditions. For instance, brain injuries, cerebral palsy, Parkinson's disease, quite a few other things as well. And for instance, we've just been working on using vision to actually treat tinnitus. And we're getting about 40% stopping of tinnitus using the vision.
And that's the ringing in the ears, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
But we're in the middle of another trial on that at the moment. So all being well, there'll be a treatment for tinnitus for 40% of people in the not too distant future.
Which is amazing, because in the past, when people have had that ringing in the ears, it has almost been a hopeless diagnosis, and it's the kind of thing that can make someone literally lose their mind because it's so disruptive to them being able to focus on anything else. So what a fabulous thing to find that something with our ears might be treatable when looking at it as a vision issue.
Well, it's quite common in autism as well. Not many people realize that, but a tremendous amount of the children we see have tinnitus.
I did not realize that. But it makes sense, and it brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about with you, because this whole idea of, we talk about an autism perspective taking, being able to look at something from somebody else's point of view. And it's frequently talked about as if the people who are on the autism spectrum are lacking this. But I think every day we find out how little we're taking their perspective. And especially in the field of what you hear and what you see, so often we don't ask even ourselves amongst our community, but we certainly don't ask kids on the spectrum, what are you seeing and how are you seeing it? We have this assumption that everybody sees things the same way, and you have found, in fact, that this is not the case.
Very much so.
So talk to us about that.
In fact, well, what you should assume is that the autistic child, if it's your child, does not see the same as you. You should assume that, rather than assume that they see the same as you. About 80% of children on the autistic spectrum have unusual methods of processing what they see. Now, this can vary from very simplistic things like things are the wrong size or the wrong shape, through to quite extreme things in which things change to completely different animals. People look at people's faces. We know of at least 35 different types of facial recognition problem. Those, by the way, can be treated, or at least most of them can, and they can be treated in seconds. We have the idea that a child should be asked to look at the person's face. Look me in the eyes, they say. And you know, that can be actually totally unpleasant, because the child might be seeing that person as a monster. They might not be able to use both the vision and the auditory system at the same time. They may have synesthesia, where the vision is actually interpreted as something completely different. The eyes themselves may not be on the face, they may be flying around the room. They may be actually distorted. The face itself may look like a clown's face, or the eyes may be, a common one we find is the eyes appear on the cheeks. And it's so common that you should assume that your child has these problems.
Okay. But how do we find out what our child is seeing? Because it's such a, you know, it's, we say this all the time, it's like describing blue to somebody who's blind.
Right.
If my perception is that eyes are in a certain place and I assume that that's correct, and I don't even know that it's correct where I see eyes, but how do I, right? How do I find out where my child sees eyes?
Okay.
Is that a test?
A simple thing you can do, and anyone can do this with a child, is ask them a simple question. First of all, do faces look strange to you at any time? And if they say yes, how do they look strange? Or do they look wrong? Has the child said, these people look like monsters? Has the child said, I can't recognize people? So if the child can't recognize somebody, the chances are they've got a visual problem.
Okay.
If the child is a simple thing you can ask a child to do, and the most common problem is they have a problem with the area of vision which is clear. So you get a child to look at your nose, tip of my nose, don't move your eyes, and watch them to make sure they don't do it. At that point, say, how much of my face is very clear? And you'll be surprised. I would say 40% of those on the spectrum will say only the nose.
Interesting.
And it's quite scary, because one of the things that a child will often do is they'll scan a face to try and work out what's actually going on. So they'll actually look at a face, and so one of the reasons why they can't recognize expressions, because there isn't enough face in the visual field to actually recognize that. Now, one of the problems you've got is the next sort of thing is the vision is actually often desynchronized with other senses. So, for instance, if a child looks at your mouth, when lip sync goes on the cinema, it's a major problem, and it's quite easy to sort this out if you know what you're doing. So what we would actually do is we'd tune the vision into the hearing, so that and you don't get a problem called the McGurk effect. And the McGurk effect is where you hear the wrong sounds because you can't see the person's face properly. And so we get into these sort of areas. We get into the faces turn into inanimate objects. That's a relatively rare one, but a common one they get is the face will change size, change color. If expression can't be recognized, you have to ask, why can't you recognize the expression? Is it you can't see the face properly? And often the case is, yes, I can't see the face properly. And again, it's treatable. All these things are treatable. You then start putting in all the other things, like, for instance, the visual control of a lot of the movement there is using the dorsal stream. So what happens in that sort of situation is when a child can't see down below, because a lot of children on the spectrum have very poor lower visual fields, and they have neglect in the fields, in the lower fields. And by the way, your optometrist is unlikely to test that. It's difficult to test on a young child, although we would do it in practice. But it's one of the problems is if you can't see down below, you're gonna not know where your body is, and so you're not going to know where your body is in space, and so you're going to become clumsy. You then change the timing, because one of the tests we would do is we would actually look at how the child, do they see the hands move at the same time as the fielder move? So is the proprioception in time with the vision? So we're looking at an almost a four-dimensional matching situation. And now it's been known basically how to do this with vision since the 1920s, but it's never really been applied very much in autism. In fact,
it's interesting. Did you just see there was a study that came out a couple of weeks ago that talked about exactly what you're talking about, but in elderly people, that the timing between your eye sense and getting to your body gets a little bit off, and that's why elderly people tend to trip or fall, because the timing is a little bit off. Interesting. I hadn't thought about that in terms of people with autism. So all of this is so exciting to me. You can't know, like I'm so excited to be talking to you about this, but I want to make sure that parents know you do have a book out right now that's called A Parent's Guide to Vision in Autism Spectrum Disorder, that I think is probably a must-have for all of us. It is available right now on Amazon, and I'm looking at it right now on Amazon. That it's $13.85 to get the paperback version, and you can get the Kindle for only $7 right now on Amazon. So I want to encourage people, and we're showing the cover of the book right now. And when I saw the cover of this book, I was like, oh, there's something wrong with the picture, because it shows some of the visual disturbances that you've been talking about. And that went right to my core, where I thought, okay, I don't for sure know exactly. I know that for my son, he always wanted to look at things out of the corner of his eye.
Well, that's another thing.
And then we did take him to an optician who deals in diagnosing certain things, and he showed me what was happening with my son's eyes, and we've been trying to strengthen them. But I'm wondering if that's just the tip of the iceberg, if there are more questions that I need to be asking. So will this book help us to get on the road to figuring out what's going on with our kids?
It's a good start. That's all.
Okay.
Because the first thing is, I see half my patients are autistic.
Okay.
I have never met two autistic children who are the same.
Okay.
So, but what you have to start thinking about, which isn't in the book, is about things like symptom clusters, different nerve pathways and clusters of pathways. Is this something we can treat? And the answer is, generally speaking, yes. And for instance, one of the things we will do in the practice is we'll change arousal levels. Now, arousal levels are very important in autism because they have effects on things like ability to speak. And we get probably one a month a child starting to speak in the practice for the first time.
Wow.
Which usually, but that's an emotional time for us as well.
And that's just from changing things from a visual treatment point of view. You're not doing other therapies. This is not medicine. You're changing the way that they can look at the world.
Everything we do works immediately. So, for instance, if you've got a child who can't see a face, we would normally expect to sort that out while that child is in the practice, within 5 minutes.
Wow.
It's as fast as that.
And it's as simple as sometimes putting a colored filter on lenses for them?
Yes, but it's not as simple as that,
right.
Unfortunately. The way we do it is we separate the retinal cone cell pathways. We do a thing called univariance. So at the back of your eye, you've got 3 different pathways for color. And what we do is we separate them and recombine them and try and work out the range in which the child can actually work properly. And by the way, we can do it for non-verbal children as well. So they don't have to be able to speak to us. We then factor in the lighting. So we do a bit of clever mathematics and try and work out what sort of lens would actually work in all sorts of lighting conditions. So, in Scotland, we have a lot of cloudy skies. And that's quite a different lighting condition to fluorescent lights. Mm-hmm. And so we want to try and find a lens that will actually work in both situations. So it's actually quite a complex mathematical problem to deal with. Now we developed an instrument with government help about 10, 15 years ago. And unfortunately, there's not a single one available in America. That's the bad news.
Okay.
I'd like, the problem about it is it's all to do with costs.
Right.
For us to redo it for America will cost us a lot of money. There's a number in Britain, there's in Wales, Scotland, Ireland. We've got one going into Belgium in 2 weeks' time. We've got the first day in Russia today.
Wow.
And we get invited to go abroad on a lot of occasions.
And when you go abroad, do you bring the machine with you, or the machine can't travel?
No, the machine can travel.
Okay.
It's very straightforward. It shouldn't travel, but it does. There's excellent circumstances.
Okay. So right now, if you're in the United States, and our show is worldwide, so there are people watching us all over the world, but if you're in the United States, you don't have access to this, so we either have to find a way to bring you over here, or we have to go to Scotland, Wales, Russia.
Well, the good news is, if you're in Britain, we do it through the health service.
Right.
So
but not if you're an American citizen. If you're visiting,
if you're an American citizen, we
that
can
doesn't
actually
work.
assess and do it through the health service. It's inexpensive to test.
Okay, and you said it's relatively quick.
Oh, all the effects happen when we're doing the tests. So you actually see, for instance, you'll see your hand-eye coordination change. You'll hear the difference in your hearing. Your balance will change when we're doing it. Your sense of smell, your sense of touch, your sense of taste will change while we're actually testing you.
And I want to say 2 things about this for people who are like, okay, this sounds too good to be true. First of all, you have videos on YouTube where you show people talking about what they can see, and then you put the glasses on them, and then they can see something that they couldn't see in a place that they couldn't see it before. But also, for a couple of decades now, we have known that for individuals who have dyslexia, another area that you work in, if we put a colored filter over a page of text, if it's the right color, that individual with dyslexia can now read the text. So this isn't completely out of the realm of what we already understand.
Well, there's going to be some new things for that coming out in the not too distant future too.
I'm
because
sure.
One of the things you get with dyslexia and autism, you actually have the similar symptoms in autism to that of dyslexia. For instance, you might get where you see the letters upside down, or D's and B's invert. people see faces turned upside down. You may get the parts of the letters distorting or changing. People see that. People see faces disappear, just like they'll see letters disappear. There's actually a very similar sort of pathway, although it's not the same pathway, to dyslexia as to autism. And there's a lot of parallels. And the same applies to things like dyscalculia and things of this nature as well.
All right, I think we should take a short break, but then I want to come back and talk about synesthesia, and you had a couple of other things that you wanted to bring up for us all to think about. So we're just going to take a short break, and we're going to be back more with Ian Jordan talking about visual disturbances and things specifically within the realm of autism spectrum disorder. Stick with us.